You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet you. We could all take a breath. We could smile.
I've had a shit week, you guys. We've been moving offices. I'm at home right now, but we've been moving offices after 10 years in a space with like a million, things to deal with.
Yeah.
And a shit landlord.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to hear that.
Anyways, it's all good now, but my week's been hell. So this is the perfect ending to it, being with great people.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Rick, where do you live? And
I am in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Nice.
I don't know if you've had a chance if you know anything about Kaleem and I and our history, but we grew up in the same town of Bangor, Maine.
Wow.
Now, are you from Calgary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have you been up here, you guys?
I've never been there, but a good friend of mine actually still lives there. You know Kelly McQuiggan? Have you ever heard of her?
No.
She was a model. She was an actress and model back in the 80s. It's like asking a guy from England if he knows Paul McCartney.
Hey, do you know Drake? I mean, what's up? What's going on?
Welcome back, everybody, to Remotely One. I am Rick. He is Kaleem. Hey, buddy.
What's going on, man? I'm loving it. We're in the white brick house today, baby. We're in the white brick
having
house.
So much fun already down here at the subway terminal.
We are.
Sir. Yeah. Hey, we got an exciting episode today. I'm excited.
Yes, we do.
Really excited to get into it. But before we get to that point, I have a couple of things I want to throw out there to our audience.
What do you got?
Since our audience knows how to find us already,
better.
I'm begging all of you to please do us a favor. Go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one and just leave us a review. It's not too hard. Won't take too long. Again, ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. If you could do that, it would be a miracle.
Just one review is all we're looking for.
That's it.
Just
That's
give us one review.
That's it. Hey, since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 2,800 Slack members and 4,000 email subscribers. It's free to join. Go check us out at remotelyone.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, line us up, baby. What do we got going on today?
Here we go. Okay. So, you know how we're just getting more and more higher level guests? I mean,
we're moving on up. We're going up to that deluxe apartment in the sky, baby.
Oh, I love it. Today's guest, okay? She is from Calgary, Canada, a.k.a. a Calgarian.
Oh.
What do you think?
Love it.
That's my freestyle. I freestyled that shit. She graduated with her PhD in industrial/organizational psychology from the University of Calgary, of course. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And guess what her dissertation was on, Rick? Guess what her dissertation was on?
Give me a clue.
The dissertation, it was 197 pages first off, and it was on virtual team leadership. Can you believe that shit? We got somebody who is Dr. Can't say her name. I almost slipped right there. She's also an adjunct professor at the University of Calgary. Okay. Mm-hmm. She has a lovely family, kids, of course. She's up in the mountains. She got a hot tub, she was saying earlier.
Ooh.
You know what I also love, sir? Because we're from Maine and, Canada's kind of like our cousins, she used one of the best words ever. She said she has a wicked vivid imagination. So for all you Southerners,
gonna fit right in.
She's gonna fit right in. But for all you Southerners, I remember, Rick, the first time I said to someone that's wicked awesome, they thought I was the devil himself down here.
You were like evil.
It was like, what do you Wicked.
The wicked stepfather.
Holy smokes. Well, her imagination, right, has led to her being an author of psychological thrillers, nonfiction, and fiction, actually. She writes both.
Gosh.
And she's currently working on a screenplay. Come on, HBO, pick this shit up. Come on. She loves playing squash. We learned a little bit about squash. And why does she like to play squash? Because she loves beating the shit out of the little ball. Like, she loves it.
Aggression.
Aggression, I love that. She also likes golf. She's been playing golf a long time, and you know what? She enjoys a few sodas in the golf cart, if you know what I'm saying.
Libations.
Libations. Our guest today, she's just amazing. She's a keynote speaker, thought leader on the evolution of work. She is the founder and CEO of Canada Career Counseling. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Laura. Let's go.
Welcome aboard.
Dr. Laura. Woo! Let's go, baby. Let's go.
You got a front row seat to your own show. How do you feel about that, Dr. Laura?
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Laura. Now, there are multiple Dr. Lauras. Which Dr. Laura are you?
I'm the Canadian Dr. Laura, not to be confused with the Dr. Laura that's been on the radio there for decades. I'm not that Dr. Laura, nor do I want to be.
I don't want you to be either. I'm glad you're Dr. Laura.
I'm glad that you have decided to reclaim the persona of Dr. Laura. Now, just out of curiosity, when you say your full name, do you use all three names? So are you Laura Hambley Lovett, or do you use, what did you publish under?
I published, so I use either name depending on my mood. Lovett's my married name. Laura Lovett sounds a bit like I don't know, a showgirl.
Yes, say it. You're gonna say like an OnlyFans page. You're gonna say like Laura loves it.
But
Laura loves it.
I penned my novels, my psychological thrillers under Laura Lovett because I think it's a really good pen name.
It's a great pen name.
Yeah, been my academic name.
I love it.
Hambley Lovett.
I love it too.
So Dr. Laura is the easiest. Let's just go with that.
I love
Fantastic.
I love it. I love it too.
I love it too. It's so good in so many different ways.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say, I'm so excited to talk to you. I have so many questions. This conversation, from what I've gathered in the last 20 or so minutes, is going to go in a number of different directions because you're just so much fun to talk to. Yes. But, you said something earlier about the evolution of work, okay? And it kind of got my wheels turning because here in America, we've got this, Kaleem, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but we've got this like toxic grind culture, okay? And it's fixed into a very kind of regimented, 8 to 5, you're on my time kind of thing. Can you walk us through a little bit about the culture in Canada versus what it's like in here in the United States, and how does the evolution of work kind of culminate into one or the other, or both?
Oh gosh, that could be a whole hour or a whole year. Actually, a whole year discussion.
Rick, this is why you my co-host, baby. I love you so much. Great question, dog.
Yeah, it is. It's a great question, and I think workplaces, on average, when I compare America to Canada, this is on average because there's actually a fair bit of similarity too, right? There's lots of similar organizations and leaders, but I'd say on average, your work culture is there's less time off. There's less focus on the human being, right? Maternity leaves and paternity leaves is the biggest example because in Canada, they were a year and there they were 6 weeks, right? Like that's the difference. And in Canada, they've been raised to 18 months as an option. And down there, it's, have your baby, get it out of the way, and then back to work, right? Work is number one, and human beings are humans doing. They're resources. right?
Human
and I think
resources, right.
Yeah, I don't like that term either, but I would say the
Definitely.
pandemic was a great reset, an opportunity to reset, because work before the pandemic wasn't roses and unicorns, right? Oh, we want to go back to the way it was before pandemic. We want everyone's butt back there. You know what? It was stressful, overload, challenge, toxic leadership, all these things that as organizational psychologists we're trying to address.
Wow. So you said there are some similarities, but that's a big difference when you just use that one example of paternity leave, right? So
And mat leave, yeah. Women and men, yeah.
Sorry, maternity leaves. Like, that's a huge cultural difference from a year originally to like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever, 12 weeks FMLA.
Yeah.
But then now you've upped it to 18 months. How has the return to office been in Canada compared to the States? Are you seeing a lot less leaders, in your opinion, requiring people back at the office? Or you kind of feel like it's kind of a global-ish type thing that we're seeing people trying to get back to the way it, quote unquote, used to be?
I see it more in the media in the U.S. about bringing everyone back and almost being proud of it, right? So, you know, they'll make an announcement and Goldman Sachs is bringing everyone back, stampede back to the office, and almost like proud of it, and it's happening more often there. And I think the period of time where, you know, organizations were considering this and trying out hybrid was maybe a bit less there on average than up here. But we're having the same issues too about leaders just getting fearful, bringing everyone back. And I speak out on that all the time. I write about it. I write in national outlets. I had an article on Market Watch and Chief Executive and different U.S. publications about this very issue of flexibility. And that's why I love what you're doing with Remotely One and sharing the messages globally on this, because remote work needs to be a fabric of organizations, I think.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for that compliment.
That's amazing. Well, from the standpoint of managers, okay, why do you think so many of them are so forceful in bringing back their employees and reluctant to embrace remote work?
Because remote leadership and hybrid leadership are more difficult. They take extra effort from managers. Managers need to step up their game and develop greater skills in how to lead people, right? And I'd say it's easier when you can see the butts in seats and you can walk around the hall. And it's command and control leadership where presenteeism matters. If I see you, I know you're working, but I have news. People will slack if they're slackers, whether they're in the cubicle or on the couch.
Right. So it takes more effort. You're absolutely right. You know, I think that's one thing we probably haven't said enough on this podcast, Rick, that this shit's hard. It's harder. It's not easier. Employees enjoy it more for numerous reasons, but from a organizational standpoint, it's definitely harder. Like, you have to think about all of these things. You have to think about how are we going to promote people based on KPIs and avoid proximity bias. You have to think about, you know, this policy may work for one group of people, but may not work for another set of people. So it is much, much, much harder. I kind of wanted to go, I know we're being a little Canada specific, but hey, we have a expert that's based out of Calgary, a Calgarian. So like, why would we not ask these questions? You know what I mean?
Be foolish not to.
It would be foolish not to. Right. Like, you know, I need to know, do you like Drake or Snow? You know, there's so many fascinating questions that I need to know. No, but
Who?
In all seriousness, last month there was a huge strike government-wise. 155,000 government employees went on strike. And I know that there are numerous reasons as to why they went on strike, but one of the major reasons that I happened to read was that they wanted more workplace flexibility. What was the impact of their strike on the country? Because those were federal workers. Am I somewhat accurate in that?
Yeah, correct. So they wanted the right to work remotely as something that was protected in their agreements. And I think it was very telling. It spurred a lot of conversations on the media, and it's definitely raised this almost polarization in terms of people are getting too much control. The organization needs to control this, and the organization has the right to decide where people work. And then there's this pull about the people saying, well, no, I'm a human being, and you've given me the flexibility during the pandemic when you needed it from me, and now you're trying to pull that away. And what is that telling the people? It's telling them that they're not trusted, that they're not productive, right? And then it goes back to, well, what are you being measured on? And then the leaders don't have clear answers to that sometimes. And it's, you don't have clear measures of performance, yet you feel like they're performing better when they're at the office. So it really unveils a larger problem.
Yeah, I think part of this is the fact that you have so many people, so many human beings that see a better way. But the problem is the overall system that these people belong to is having a very difficult time catching up to that kind of logic. And I also think that's why you're seeing such an emergence of thought leaders, because people are starting to think out loud, and what they have to say makes a whole lot of sense. But the people up top just aren't hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm proud to be one of those thought leaders alongside you, Kaleem and Rick, just spreading the messages about this and how work can be a more fulfilling experience. And we're human beings in the end of the day. And organizations that treat people as human beings with trust, appreciation, respect, and they're open to learning and trying and pivoting and adjusting these hybrid and distributed work models, they're the ones that are going to come out ahead. I'm sure of it.
Agreed.
I 100% agree. And I just happened to purchase Gallup's new book. I think it's called Culture Shock. I think it just came out last week. And I've only read like 10 pages so far. But page 9 just has me all mixed up, because what they're kind of saying is that people have felt this freedom, and now individuals, they actually aren't looking for work-life balance. They're looking for a way to blend their work and life versus trying to fit their life around work. People are actually like, nah, we actually want this kind of integration of life, because life is life and it's not just about work. And it's almost as if this mentality has changed for the employees. I just find it fascinating. That's where we're heading. So yeah, I totally agree that that's the future. Yeah,
I also would agree, just to interject, that that's kind of where it starts. We have a huge mental health crisis. I'm not really sure how to address if there's one in Canada, but there certainly is one here in the United States. And I believe a lot of it is due to this toxic work culture. And people have literally lost themselves to their jobs.
Yeah, we're seeing it absolutely here. And I work with organizations down there, so I get it. And it's a similar crisis in both places. Suicide rates are up. And I do think there is definitely a relationship between the toxic leader and the distrusting manager and mental health of human beings. And I think that it's a cry for better leadership. It's a cry for more humanistic leadership that cares and is curious and checks in with people and supports people versus just the profit. It needs to be people, profit, planet, and purpose, the 4 Ps. And I see like 99% on profit and then like 0.01 on people, right? So, I'm just being dramatic, but
there's nothing wrong with that. In that same vein, I'm also wondering, was there a point in your life or a situation or an incident that kind of pushed you to pursue organizational psychology, and how that decision has affected everything you've done ever since?
There was. That's a great question, Rick. So I started out my career in counseling psychology, where I did my master's because I really wanted to help people. And I got really drawn to career because I figured that people spend a lot of their waking hours at work, and career is a huge part of identity. And some psychologists say, that's kind of boring. You just test them and then tell them what to do. And it's actually a deeply, deeply purposeful, meaning-based process to figure out what you want to do and what you want to be. And
still figuring it out, right?
at all ages. And our average age at Canada Career Counseling has been 33, like average age. People from all walks of life, all professions, backgrounds, and it's because people go into the career for the wrong reasons, and then they end up really struggling emotionally, mentally, physically, all of it when they're in the wrong career fit. I got pulled into career, which actually overlaps with organizational. I found myself working on virtual teams in the late 90s. I was working on teams with offices in Toronto, New York City, and Calgary. It was a .com type of startup focusing on career development technologies. So I was just like immersed in these teams and working for leaders from a distance early in my career. And then we got acquired, and I worked more internationally, where I had a mentor, I remember, in Ireland, England. I would work with these teams all over the world and deal with brutal time zone differences. And I said to myself, I want to get a doctorate, I want to get it before I'm 30, and I want to specialize on something that's cutting edge. So in 2002, I had to decide my topic, and I had a great professor. She was like an amazing mentor, and we decided we would do virtual team leadership. And I would study that, and I'd study different conditions in terms of how teams can solve problems and communicate when they're strictly on video versus strictly face-to-face. Versus text only. So they would have to solve the same problem in the three conditions. We had 20 teams of 4 to 5 people in each of those conditions. So that's like running 60 teams through. It was a big project. And then I said, I can do this in a lab, and I can study like video conferencing in a lab.
Oh, look at that. The book. She's showing, for all the listeners, she's showing the book. Is this of your dissertation?
Yeah, so it was innovative. At its time, 2003, we were studying video conferencing that's like Zoom is now, and Zoom wasn't launched until 2013, version 1.0 of Zoom. So it was 10 years before its time, and I was really looking at like how can we lead and collaborate through these different technologies. And I said to my professor at the time, I want to talk to real team leaders. And she said, well, your project's big enough just with the 60 teams in the lab. And I said, no, I want to do interviews, and I want to talk to leaders, all over the place about this. So I did that. We call it a field study, but it's like real conversations with real leaders. And that was really, really telling. And then I went on to do a project on how we can get cars off the road by increasing telework adoption in Canada. And the book is called Growing the Virtual Workplace, and it was released in 2006, for goodness sakes, right? Or 2007.
Dr. Laura, this is fascinating. So just to recap for everybody, you did a research study for your PhD thesis on virtual team leadership in 2000 when?
Well, it was
2003. Did you say 2003 when you started talking about it?
We were doing the studies 2003, 2004, and then the whole telework adoption studies were going on the same time frame, and then that book was published in 2007. But it was a lot of the factors. What do managers need to do? What's the benefits? What's the challenges of telework from an organizational perspective? And what are the benefits for traffic congestion and CO2 emissions? And we looked at the macro and for cities and all of this. That was way before its time.
This is 20 viewers and listeners. This message I cannot repeat this enough. And this is why we love this show so much. Dr. Laura has been researching this since 2003. It's 20
years as a pioneer. So it's like, you guys remember Little House on the Prairie, or was that before your time?
I do.
That was it. Okay,
of course you do.
Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Of course you
Michael
remember
Landon is my hero. Stop
of course
talking.
you remember Little House on the Prairie. Of course you do.
Pioneers, right? Pioneers settling in small town America. But one of them was named Laura Ingalls, and I'm like a pioneer, like Laura Ingalls. We're trying to bring up a topic way before its time. Yeah. And then a co-founder of Work Evolution, so he's a professor of IO psychology, a tenured professor, and a brilliant person, and we ended up creating the world's first personality profiler of a remote worker called the Distributed Work Profiler, and it was profiled in Scientific American magazine because it was the first of its kind. Why do certain personalities work well remotely and others struggle? So it's all evidence.
Do you actually still believe that?
I do, and I think some personalities have more, how do I say this, challenges in terms of with full-time remote work, but it doesn't mean they can't do it. It means they need to be aware of their personality and then work with it and figure out strategies to do it better. So we helped a ton with that during the pandemic. We helped organizations with that. And then we helped with leaders. Certain leaders struggle leading remotely, and we know the ingredients of why. We assess them, and then we help them. We say, okay, you're naturally like this. We need you to be aware of it, and we need to set up plans and actions so you can do it better. Because this is the way of things. You are leading a remote team now. It's the pandemic. You know?
You need to
And
step
then,
it up.
oh, but hybrid. Okay, we'll help you with hybrid, but it's harder. Like, hybrid's harder than purely remote or purely face-to-face, but it's worth
course.
it. The data say it's worth it. So,
Of course.
you know, yeah.
For any person who's looking to go to school, you touched on it very briefly. You started in the traditional psychology counseling area. How would you kind of define quickly industrial organizational psychology?
It's psychology applied, the evidence base of psychology applied to make organizations better places for human beings. So it covers all aspects of organizational life and functioning from a human perspective. It takes the science and evidence into whether it's leaders, teams, cultures, hiring, performance, learning and development, like all these different like areas that HR oversees as well, but it's bringing a deep psychological expertise into it.
And what have you found, just out of curiosity, from your research and the people you've interviewed, what have you found to be kind of the common thread for traits? You know, like what is a real common thread between leaders and even people, employees as well, among really good remote workers?
Trust, propensity to trust. And we're all wired differently. Some of us grow up being naturally distrusting.
Sure, I'm hungry. I mean, you just hit me hard like Pookie.
Oh, that was.
You just hit me hard
It was
like
so
Pookie.
easy for you to say. You just threw it out there, and we were like, "Whoa!"
Because like we
so
talk
real.
about trust all the time, but like
It's a personality trait, and it's also
yeah.
something that's ingrained in you in growing up. And the propensity to trust or distrust as a reaction to when you first meet people, it really dictates how a lot of this stuff goes. Yeah.
That is without question. That is such a big word. It's often overlooked, in my opinion.
And it's tough to train. So when someone's distrusting, it's tough to say, okay, we're going to train you and teach you how to trust. So I find that my most success has been like the deep one-on-one work, right? Okay, like, let's talk about this. Okay, Kaleem. Like, so you naturally distrust. Yeah, but people, once they prove me differently, I'll trust them. Once they earn my trust. And I'm like,
yes, gotta earn it.
Yeah, I gotta just tell you, that's that like command and control, and that worked well when we had factories, sort of, but not really. But it worked in the past, but it ain't working now. Oh, but lots of people are being laid off. Like it's an employer's market. No, it isn't an employer's market anymore. It is not an employer's market. It's a human being's market.
I love this.
Oh,
Human
wow!
beings.
I think we just found the title of this episode. It's a human beings market.
It's a human beings market. There it is.
I love it. Well, Dr. Laura, we don't have much time left, and I want to make sure we don't go over the time. So I've got to ask you the question that's on everybody's mind. Do you have a comical or inspiring moment that you had while we were working remotely?
Sure. So my husband and I were both working remotely, and he was set up in the master bedroom because we have 3 kids and they all have their, and so he was set up in the master because he wanted to overlook the mountains there, and I was in my office here, and so I moved into my son's room and he moved into the basement. We all had spaces, but his was the flipping master bedroom, and he was on a board meeting, and at that time they were using GoToMeeting, and they didn't have a hide or a blurred function at that time on that platform, and
so I
literally I'm like, I have to do my makeup like I'm doing a presentation or something, a keynote, and I had to sneak into the master and crawl on the floor.
I
he's
love
like,
it.
"What are you doing, Laura?" I'm like, "I need my makeup. Like, I'm in a board meeting. I need my makeup." So I
They'll
crawled
understand.
in, went into the ensuite and did it, and then crawled out. And I'm like, "Shoot, geez." I said, "You got to move out of the master." Like,
Yeah. So just to kind of get a visual, are you seeing, he's on the meeting and everybody's looking at him, and then all of a sudden they see your hair by the desk and they're like, what's going on?
I don't think they saw my hair because I was on the ground, but he's like flipping out. "What are you doing in here?" Well,
Okay, so you're
my bedroom.
You were army crawling, so
Yeah.
okay, so no one could see.
That's hilarious.
The funniest thing about that, Dr. Laura, I literally did the same thing. I did the same thing just the other day. No shirt on. My sweaty body scraping myself across the floor was awful. But yes,
my gosh.
But thank you so much for that. That's great.
No,
Well,
that is amazing.
I'm happy to talk again, you guys, and I have a podcast too. Maybe we can cross paths there. Mine's called Where Work Meets Life, and it's topics at the intersection of work and life.
Ooh, Where Work Meets Life.
I would love to join in on that.
Yes.
But before we part ways, where can our listeners find you?
Ooh,
drlaura.live. Dr. Laura, all is one word, .live. I have my articles, my podcast, my speaking, and even my psychological thrillers are on there.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, well, I'm definitely going to check that out. I hope all of our listeners will too. You are a brilliant source of information, and I wish this conversation could go a little longer, but
totally intimidated, but you're so cool. You're such a cool person. I could hang out with you. Just because you're so esteemed doesn't mean you're not cool. You know what I'm saying?
Gosh,
like,
Kaleem,
esteemed people are cool too.
You're the one who was on stage at South by. I presented 2 years in a row at South by, but that was years ago. You were there this year on stage, and you're doing great work with Remotely One and with your whole platform, Kaleem. So I really respect you, and I respect you, Rick. And this podcast is so much fun. So much fun.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. You'll have to come back again and hang out because we need a part 2, Kaleem.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 for sure. Dr. Laura, thank you so much. Everybody, please go to drlaura.live.
Yes.
Book her for your next keynote. She's done a ton of them. She's got a great speaker reel, which I got a copy. The thing is dope. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Namaste. Take care, you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.